Today's video is on chop and drop agroforestry. So let's talk a little bit about chop and drop management in agroforestry and food forest systems. The concept behind chop and drop is planting out leguminous, ideally leguminous plants, but you can really use anything that has biomass, with it. And the idea is to fill all of our gaps in our system. So we have our overstory fruit trees, we have our understory fruit trees, we have our various interplants. In this case here in the tropics, we're using bananas, we're using papaya, we're using smaller shrubbery plants like noni, acerola. So we're kind of creating our map, our overlayer of all of our system, right? And then we're going to go in at the end and we're going to fill all of that space in between with things that we can chop and drop. Now, what does chop and drop? It's any plant that's going to grow fast, have a quick coppice response. So what's coppice response? That means if you chop it, it resprouts and grows quickly again. Some of the things we use here, we use Perot, we use Fulmengia, we use Lucania, we use Caliandra. That's just 4 on the list of, we have probably about 8 different nitrogen fixing species here on the farm. And there's thousands of them that exist. You're gonna have to check out for your zone what works the best. And the more variety you can have, obviously, like with diversity, like with any given system, the better. And so we like to mix and match those. Oftentimes we'll use our nitrogen fixing species as a hedgerow. So we'll plant a contoured hedgerow and then we'll plant our fruit trees just a couple meters above that. Now what that does, it acts as a wall. We actually use the nitrogen fixing plants with a hedge of vetiver, and we do a double hedgerow about 1 meter apart, and those fill in nice and thick. All that soil and sediment that's coming down in the water, that's coming down the hill, down your slope, it just slows that down. It creates a wall, it stops it, and what it will actually do is build a terrace for you over time right up onto your fruit trees that you have planted 1.5 meters, 2 meters up from that. Now it also makes it very easy to go through there and chop and drop. So we just walk right along our hedges, we chop it, and we toss it right onto our system, okay? So we use our hedgerows, and then we go back and we even interplant in all the spaces between that. We want to blanket our entire system with these chop and drop species. Now, what do they help us with? Well, the obvious things is they are high in they're nitrogen fixing. The ones that we're using that are nitrogen leguminous plants. They're high in nitrogen, which is great for our plants and great for our soil. They're also just, the biomass helps to break down and helps to create homes for your microorganisms. It helps to protect your soil. There's this huge thick layer that we're laying down, and that protects your soil from sun and rain. And it breaks down and actually turns into soil and turns into dirt itself over time. All the microorganisms and all the little bugs that are living in there, they come in, they eat that stuff, and they turn it into soil, and they turn into good, healthy soil. They turn into biomass. So this is the idea behind that. Now, some of the other things that happen when we plant all these nitrogen fixers throughout our system is we're creating really fast shade. They're fast-growing plants and trees. And so, again, we're always talking about, with food forests and agroforestry, speeding up succession. We're trying to mimic a natural forest, but we're doing that in a way that is for the human population. We're putting elements in there that are going to feed humans and animals. And we're trying to speed up what a natural forest would take, where a natural forest might take 100 or 200 years from start to where it's becoming a real dense forest. We can do that in 10 years with a food forest system. Part of that is filling all the gaps, creating really fast shade, and getting all of our plants that would normally not come out until there was plenty of shade in place. They're going to come out much quicker. So we're going to get our low-lying soft ground covers that we want. We're going to get a lot less of the noxious weeds and all the vines that happen. And so that's a huge benefit. Now also, the weeds, it helps with weeding. The more plants you can fill in, the more useful things that you can fill your space with, the less weeds you're going to have to deal with. And then it's really easy. Instead of having to haul your sackos of compost in on a regular basis, you come through, you chop those plants, you throw them on your trees, and you're growing fertilizer in place right next to your trees. Now, of course, we do fertilize our trees once to twice a year. Mostly we're going to do that for the first 5 years. The first 3 to 5 years is the most important time for you to take care of your fruit trees. That's when they're going to have their most dynamic growth. That's when they're establishing their root systems, and that's when you really need to baby them. So in our first 3 to 5 years, we come in every 6 months to a year, and we bring our fertilizers in. So here in the tropics, we use a really specific fertilizer mix. We put a lot of different things in there that are helping to make our soil better. So we like to use things that have a lot of silica in them. And the silica is a binding agent that helps the soil bind the nutrients and the minerals into the soil and not leach out. And so we're using rice hulls. We're using biochar. Biochar is an amazing technology. It's basically carbon that's created in an environment without oxygen. Okay, so you're making charcoal basically. You know, the less oxygen you can have in that process when you're making that charcoal, the better your end result product's going to be, and the longer that carbon's going to stay in your soil and not go back into the atmosphere. Check out Biochar online. There's tons of information about it, but it's an amazing technology, and it works just like it does in a water filter. It's a magnetic binding agent. So it takes the nutrients around it, and when we're introducing those nutrients into the soil, it binds them and it holds them in place so that they don't get leached out and go back to the atmosphere right away, which happens here in the tropics. The leaching factor in the soil is huge, and so we have to put things in our soil that are going to help bind our minerals. So rice hulls, bamboo is another all-star that has a bunch of silica in it, so we like to shred bamboo and put that into our mix. The carbon, we use we use some kind of manure. So it's whatever we have readily available. Sometimes it's chicken manure, sometimes it's cow manure, sometimes it's horse manure, sometimes it's goat manure. Whatever you have readily available. We mix that stuff all together. We add pulverized rock powder, which also is more of a long-term mineral release formula, and it also helps to put some aeration in the soil. And then we inoculate that with microorganisms, and these are microorganisms that we collect from our local forest. We want to have our local area microorganisms working with us because they're what's adapted to our area. Okay, so we inoculate that whole mix with our microorganisms. We mix that up. We give it a little bit of time to inoculate, and then we come in and we spread that out around our trees, and then we come in right behind that and we do our chop and drop right over that. Now our chop and drop will happen about 6 times a year. Like I said, we'll only fertilize once or twice a year. So that saves us 4 other times throughout the year of having to, bring those fertilizers in, do all the labor it takes to mix them up, haul them into all of our systems, which are spread out over 30 acres, and it just saves you a lot of time. So chop and drop is the way to go. There's definitely going to be a legume and plants that will work in your area, so check out what works. Don't be afraid. You can't plant them too close to your tree, really. They're not going to hurt your tree. If you find out they're a little too close, you chop them back a little bit. So chop and drop, Agroforestry, it's the way to go. So the moral of the story here is get your hands on as much nitrogen-fixing plants and seeds as you can and spread them out in your landscape. It's going to help you in every way. It's going to benefit your system. It's going to benefit your soil. It's going to benefit your trees. And it makes it beautiful, I mean, we're sitting here in this little forest of legumes. So do the research, see what works in your area, and give it a try. Just plant it out all over your land. Thanks for watching today. Thanks for helping us spread permaculture across the planet. Please like, subscribe, and share with your friends, and we'll see you again soon.